You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com.
You know, I almost didn't do the show. I almost said no. I almost was like, you know what? It's 4th of July weekend. What's exciting about this team? Everybody's going to be just, eating hot dogs and hamburgers and partying with their family and watching fireworks. And there's going to be no White Sox news. And there's White Sox news. So I'm like, all right, we're going to do the show. I'm up at the Lake Cottage in beautiful Lake Manitou in Rochester, Indiana, with the whole family. And I was like, okay, I'll jump on Mobley with Ed, and we'll do a show because Colson Montgomery,
the all-time greatest top prospect in White Sox history, all 100-plus years of it.
It was predicted by James Fox when he filled in for me a week or so ago, and I just did his show, Future Sox, this week, where we talked about the 05 team and a few other things, and he had me on as a guest, which was really nice. But he co-hosted with you, and I remember him saying, if Colson Montgomery gets hot, they're going to bring him right up here. And if you look at what he's done in the last 2 weeks, Colson Montgomery hit .351 with a .415 on base percentage, slugging .811 with 4 home runs in there over 37 at bats for a .1226 OPS in Charlotte. And they're like, get him up here before he cools off again and send him up against the Rockies because they're the worst team in baseball. If the White Sox could move that game, is that game in Colorado? They're in Colorado this weekend,
They're in
right?
Colorado, I believe, yeah.
Yeah. So, you couldn't set this up better for him. Like, hey, let's get our hottest prospect into the thin air of Colorado against the worst team there is while he's hot, and let's see whether or not we get lightning in a bottle with him. Like, I think you might actually get good returns right off the bat from him. I just don't know if it's sustainable. When I look at this guy's baseball card, every time he goes up a level, his stats go down. He never fully adjusts to the level that he's at. And so what we have here is he works with Ryan Fuller. He does well. He drops off. He does well again. Like, he's very streaky in this year down in Charlotte. He's good, then all of a sudden he'll kind of fall back again. They're hitting a hot streak right now. They're getting him into Colorado in the thin air, and they're saying, let's see what he can do. And this team was bringing him up no matter what, and I think they looked at it and said, this is our best chance. This is our best chance it works out with Colson Montgomery. We're going for it.
Yeah, and there's still some red flags. He's still striking out at a decent clip. Yeah,
even over the last 15 games, or the last 15 days. It's 9 games in the last 15 days is where he amassed those stats. 3 walks to 13 strikeouts.
Yeah, so that means when he is hitting the ball, he's back to hitting it really, really well, but he's still missing a lot. And it's one of those where you're right. You can get up into Colorado with some mediocre pitching. It's a hitter-friendly environment. He's got power. He can probably knock a few out of the park if he gets a hold of one, if he gets some bad pitches to hit, because clearly he can do that right now, and if the moment's not too big for him. But what happens when he gets an opportunity against a real pitcher in a ballpark that's not so friendly? What happens when we get back home as the White Sox and he's going up against the Guardians or something like that, where there's a team that has already given the White Sox fits over the years. You're going to probably watch Colson Montgomery struggle a little bit and not be the superstar that we were told he was going to be, but maybe what they can do is they can start molding him into something productive, something Lenyn Sosa-like, okay, where he doesn't fit the mold that Ryan Fuller seemingly wants. He doesn't have the high on base percentage unless he's hitting the ball. He's striking out a little bit too much. But he's an opportunity to look and see, okay, well, is there something with this guy that we can do? Because there's nothing to lose at this point.
No, and they've put so much into this. This is something that they've almost hinged their entire rebuild on, is that Colson Montgomery will come to the majors and be a linchpin in their offense. And he's going to sit and he's going to be out at shortstop. It's like they need it so badly to work. That's why they're pouncing at this time. And I'm not going to blame them for pouncing. Like, if you insist on putting this kid in the majors and you insist on doing it this year, now is probably the most opportune time to do it. And when you get out to the ballpark to go see Colson Montgomery, get over to Cork and Carry at the Park. Proud sponsors of Sox in the Basement. 33rd and Princeton in the shadow of the ballpark. Award-winning menu of burgers and ballpark favorites. Extensive bar. Rotation of craft beers. Familiar favorites. Spirits and wines. Your home for White Sox pregame, postgame, and viewing parties. Cork and Carry at the Park. See more at corkandcarry.com. And what I think this does is it moves Mydroth to second because you're not taking him out of the order. And so now Montgomery's at short. And now you got to figure out what you're going to do. Like, where does everybody fall in this lineup? Do you move Sosa to one of the corner infield positions and Vargas at the other one? What do you do here? How do you see them shaking out with it? We're recording right now before Friday night, and no matter what they do on Friday night, it's going to take about a week before you really understand what Will Venable and the White Sox are doing in terms of the everyday lineup and how they're going to set things up. But Montgomery's going to slide in at short. You got to imagine that Mydroth is going to slide every day at second base. So now you have another player that one's going to be released, and then you're going to have to move guys around, Ed.
Yeah, they haven't announced the exact transaction yet to call up Montgomery, but I have a sneaking suspicion Ryan Noda is not going to stick around. Or Vinny Capra, possibly one of those two guys.
Which is a shame because we had a Ryan Noda connection. Like, we actually had somebody reach out, his friend, and I've been texting with him, and I was like, maybe we'll get Ryan Noda on the show soon, and we can talk about what it's like to be a rookie in that locker room, and he's going to get sent out of there. I think he's going to be the guy to get sent down. I could be wrong, though. By the time this comes out, I could be completely wrong. I've been wrong about a few things, Ed. I got called out on Twitter, my Lou Piniella story. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Where I was talking about how I talked to him during the Bobby Jenks thing? Okay, Lou Piniella was not the manager of the Mariners, but I had the story right. Bobby Jenks debuted against the Tampa Bay Rays. I just always think of Piniella as a Mariner. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, no, remember, the Rays traded Randy Wynn for him.
Right, okay, yeah. So, but the thing is, you had Lou Piniella managing the Rays on July the 6th, 2005, when Bobby Jenks debuts, and Dad and I are having the conversation with Lou Piniella at the dugout steps. So
mediocre teams with blue uniforms. What are you going to do?
Right, exactly. I mean, it's really the same story. I just had the wrong team. But I had the right guy, and I had the right manager, and I had the debut of Bobby Jenks. All that stuff was correct. We also have made jokes about, like, saying that Colson Montgomery's cooked over the last couple of weeks, and the idea that when we're hard on a player, they prove us wrong, right? When we're hard on Miguel Vargas, all of a sudden he has a hot month. When we start celebrating Miguel Vargas, now all of a sudden he just slides again, right? So right. I think my policy on Montgomery is just sit there and expect nothing from him. Don't expect anything, and if it works out, you're pleasantly surprised.
He is a burnt fried egg until further notice, as far as you and I are concerned. But yeah, we don't have a transaction yet. Ryan Noda's probably a guy that could get let go because that would make sense. Vargas and Sosa cover third and first, whichever way they want to go defensively with that. I don't really know what they would do there. And or somebody like Vinny Capra, because now you have multiple middle infielders. Josh Rojas is basically
he may be the one
Capra.
That goes.
Well,
he may be the guy that goes.
And Rojas could be a guy too, but I think as a veteran he's got more value than Vinny Capra does. Vinny Capra is only going to be known for being Clayton Kershaw's 3,000th strikeout victim, and happened to be a member of the White Sox when he did it. And, beyond that, he hasn't contributed anything. At least Josh Rojas may have some value as a guy that's been around the game a while. I'm grasping at straws, but yeah.
I think it's Capra or Noda. I mean, by the time the show comes out, you'll know, but I think that's what it'll end up being. But
I do think it'll be Sosa.
Who are the starting infielders is the real question then.
Right, and I think they're done. Partially the reason why this is happening is I watched Lenyn Sosa in that Dodgers series cause all sorts of problems by not being able to get to the baseball or not being able to corral it when he did get there. And his defensive woes are starting to become really apparent. He may be passable as a first baseman with Miguel Vargas at third, but I think
that's what I would do. That's what I would do. I wouldn't put Vargas at first and Sosa at third. I'd do it the other way. I'd let Vargas play third and put Sosa over at first base. That's how I would set the whole thing up. Because Sosa does give you something with the bat. He just doesn't have a position. We were talking about that already this week. We talked about that in the last show. He's like a guy out there who's doing enough at the plate that he's one of the top 5 offensive producers on your team through the season, which is really strange and shocking. And on most teams, he wouldn't be anywhere close to that. But on this team, he is. But you don't have a place you can put him because he's a defensive liability.
Right. And so if because of his station as one of your top 5 hitters, as not good as that may be, you can't really afford to take him completely out of the lineup, nor does it make sense for a guy that young to sit there and say, we're going to bench him, we're going to put him back down in the minors to work on his defense. He's got, if you're thinking about what's coming up here, and we talked about the All-Star break and the trade deadline as being, among the highlights of the month of July, one of the things I don't count out is that somebody like Lenyn Sosa has value to another team where if Chris Getz isn't sold on him, if Will Venable's not sold on him, if they're worried about his defensive liabilities and the fact that his bat is playable but not good enough maybe for what they want to ultimately do, not a guy you build around, then maybe he becomes somebody you sit there and go, hey, young, controllable, good hitter. If you can put up with his defensive liabilities, by all means, now give us something that we can use, whatever that might be in return, because the team still has enough holes to fill. I mean, if you can trade Lenyn Sosa for a guy who's maybe more of a legitimate first baseman, that helps the team because then it is settled. It's Vargas, Montgomery, Mydroth, and then whatever you can get at first base. They could always trade him back to the Brewers and get Andrew Vaughn back if they wanted to.
Oh my goodness, not at all. I don't know. Stop. Don't even say that. Like, the funniest thing was when I was on Future Sox, that was one of the questions that they asked me when I was a guest on there, was what it was like the moment I found out that Andrew Vaughn had been traded. Like, I think I've got a solid reputation as an Andrew Vaughn hater. And
you so do.
Don't mess with me on that. For exterior windows, doors, patio doors, and storm doors, look no further than Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest. No high pressure sales. They're not in your kitchen messing up everything. You go and see them. Everything right there in front of you. No pictures in a book. See it all in person with an owner in showroom and on site. All Window and Door Superstore installers. They don't farm out the work. They've been doing it that way in Oak Forest since 1985 with all major brands custom made and no stock items for a perfect fit. Half block east of 159th and Ridgeland at 6280 159th Street. See more at windowdooroakforest.com. And did you see the story about the pitcher in Cleveland,
Luis Ortiz? Yeah.
We've been talking about up here at the lake. Like, that was the conversation today with my 17-year-old, my brother-in-law, and then his 17-year-old. We were all sitting out on the porch before I came up here to do the show, and we were all laughing about it. And we're like, what was he betting on? And it sounds like the story is he's under suspicion for betting on a single pitch.
A prop bet, yeah.
Yeah, which, first of all, again, this is why these things should never be allowed. These silly prop bets in everyday sports. You might as well have a sign up that says, players, make extra money on the side doing this. Because that's what it allows to happen. We've talked about on this show, these apps and the ability for other people to place bets for you. I mean, the accusation seems to be, as the story is coming out, even though it hasn't all been confirmed by MLB, the accusation seems to be that on 2 separate occasions, there was a large amount of money, multiple bets, placed on one pitch, like first pitch of an at-bat, and the bet was a ball or hit by pitch was selected, and he threw pitches well outside the zone. The first one is really low.
It's a slider, a breaking ball of some form. It kind of gets blown away.
But it gets too close.
Yeah.
So the second time he supposedly does it, it's like almost a wild pitch. Yeah, it's like a wild pitch. It's such a bad pitch. And what you do when you allow these prop bets, and this is the danger, this is what I've been talking about with betting. Like, remember when MLB got rid of a bunch of minor league players during the Ohtani investigation? Remember that?
Yeah.
It was like within 24 hours of Ohtani being cleared, there were 5 guys suspended for life or something like that. Or one was suspended for life and 4 of them were suspended for 2 years. It was all gambling, though. And it was a bunch of guys that didn't matter. And we said it. I guarantee there's a lot of players that all they have to do, if they can make a bet that the guy is going to be over or under going 2 for 4 and pick the under, then the guy can still come up and if he gets a hit, great. But once he gets his first 2 hits, he's going to have to go down swinging so he can get his money. And here on these prop bets for these pitchers, all this pitcher has to do is just throw one bad pitch in an at-bat. He might come back and strike the guy out. He just does one throwaway pitch, and he can make money off it on the side, him and his friends, with the bet. That's the accusation, at least, as to what happened with Luis Ortiz. And I don't know how they prove it. Like, that's the funny... How do you... If he was careful, I don't think he'll ever be able to prove the thing. I think he's just going to shrug, and he's going to get paid for this time that he was given leave, because the players' union will eventually step in and say, what proof do you have? And he could probably go right back to doing it. He could just change what the prop, get a little bit smarter, mix it up a little bit more.
Yeah, well, and I mean, the evidence is, like you said, there's an inordinate amount of activity on these two particular pitches. And that's partially because in normal circumstances, bettors nationwide could not give a rat's hind end about Luis Ortiz's pitches, right? I mean, he is the fifth starter on the Cleveland Guardians. I mean, that's just something that there's not a whole lot of national intrigue on what this guy is going to do. And so you kind of wonder, and
it's super suspicious. It's super suspicious. It's not like they're doing a prop bet. It's not like you're getting heavy action on a prop bet on a pitch during the World Series. You're right. This is just a dude, and there's really weird bets on his pitches.
Yeah, it's a lot of smoke, but you're right. There may never be any real fire. Because,
right. I mean, do I think he did it? I mean, if that's what the accusation is, looking at the pitches, yeah, I think he did it.
Yeah.
I think he did it. I'm like that. Okay, that makes perfect sense. An inordinate amount of action on individual pitches, and he throws really bad pitches well out of the zone during those things.
Right.
I mean, I think anybody with common sense would be like, yeah, he probably did it. But can you prove it? And if he's doing it, how many other guys are doing it and they haven't caught it yet? And that's why this is the thing about gambling. I mean, I explain this to my kid, but more to my nephew. My nephew Connor loves to bet. And it's funny because he's not old enough to bet, but he's betting. Right?
Well, I mean, I know kids like that too. Yes.
You know a lot of kids like that. There's a lot of high school kids that are betting.
Yeah, they love
and they get away with it.
They want to gamble, they get away with it. It's fine. I mean,
They love it. And the thing is, there's not much you can do about it because of the apps and because of the different ways they can work around what they're doing. And I always explain to them, when I was younger, you had to go to Nevada, you had to go to Atlantic City, or you had to have some skeezy bookie. That was the only way you were making bets. That was the only way you could do it. When I lived in Nevada doing radio in Reno for a year, I bet on sports games. It was fun. I did the entire 2001 NFL season. I bet every week. I had my favorite sports book in town. I would go and I would have some food. I'd eat some chicken wings. I'd have a couple of drinks. I'd watch all the games on the TV and the sports betting thing, and I would bet on games. And it was a unique thing you could do because you really couldn't do it anywhere else. And so it was a little bit harder for you to bet. It would be harder for a ball player to get away with it. There'd be more of a paper trail. There'd be more of your investigation might be able to turn up like his friend is always caught on camera in this sports book doing this. Okay, and we could trace phone calls back and forth with them. But now the anonymity of the apps and the millions of different ways that you can do things, I believe that sports betting is rampant amongst players in all sports. I think it happens all the time. I think outcomes of games sometimes are changed because players are making additional money. It's a massive problem for all major sports. And if there's one guy who maybe caused too much smoke in Luis Ortiz, I guarantee there's a lot of other guys who are a little bit slicker about it and nobody's suspecting them and they're doing it too.
Oh, 100%. In baseball, it's first of all, you're right about the old school way of doing it. That's why Pete Rose's lifetime ban over gambling, Shoeless Joe Jackson's lifetime ban over basically betting, right? I mean, that's what it was. Not that they bet on the games necessarily in Shoeless Joe's case, but the fix was in and all that.
There was gambling going on, and there were guys throwing the game, and they were getting paid by the bookies.
Although and that's
most of them never got their money. And Shoeless Joe, even though he was in the room and probably agreed to it, still hit like 400 or something like that for the series.
Still, he didn't get the memo on how to throw a baseball game.
He didn't know how to. He was too good. He couldn't throw a game. He was too good to throw a game.
But you're right. Prop bets on pitches, very, very easy to remember. Okay, in the fourth inning, the second batter, I got to throw ball one. Well, okay.
That's all he's got to do. That's all he's got to do.
That's not hard to do. My third at bat, I got to strike out. A kicker in football, if you can get away with a meaningless miss, all right,
Right.
What's
Prop
the
bet
over
on
under
an extra point?
Yeah, over under on how many extra points or how many field goals are made. Some of that's a little bit harder to predict, but the fact that you can do it in real time, all right, means that you can start making bets. You can make a bet on these things almost immediately on these apps. You're right.
Right.
And
I don't think they're doing it on the sidelines, right? Like I don't think they're ever going to catch a guy like sitting on the bench doing it, or even in the clubhouse doing it.
Yeah.
But it gets worked out ahead of time, I would imagine, with somebody else who places the bet for the guy.
Absolutely.
And that's what it is.
Absolutely.
This is like, I want you to find this bet. I want you to do this. Okay, this is what we're going to bet on today. And it's worked out ahead of time. And the guy can go out and have a great game. And that one pitch or that one at bat, or like I said, like a prop bet on whether or not you think a guy is going to get 2 hits in a game or get on base 3 times, he'll still get on base twice. And he might not, like that's the thing. I always thought with hitters, doing a bet where you're basically saying, okay, I'm betting that this really good player, and it would have to be with good players for this to work out, right? You'd have to have a guy who's a consistent player, and then you're going to actually bet that he's not going to get 2 hits in a game, or not going to. He's going to go under this line of 1.5 hits or 2.5 hits, and then he could play the game like normal, and he doesn't need to try to make an out. He just has to become aware once he's got those 2 hits. I can't get another hit in this game.
Right. And that's kind of what we're talking about is prearranging what happens in a game so that, and you're right, it could affect the outcome of the game. A player would potentially have to decide, my goodness, am I going to really try here, or I kind of have to not get on base at this moment? Like what, the game situation might dictate a different outcome, but that's where the severity of the punishment comes in, and that's why it's such a problem, because
it's the prop bets. The prop bets are the problem.
You will have players, if they're engaging in this, run into those situations where they really do have to decide between fulfilling what they agree to do with the prop bet and, boy, I really need to get a base hit here, otherwise we're going to lose this game.
Think about how easy it was when basketball players used to shave points, right?
Right.
Like when they needed to make sure that they just kept it within the line, and the superstar player or the point guard, and this has happened before, would take control late in the game and start throwing up bricks, okay? And you'd be like, wow, he's kind of being a ball hog at the end, but they're going to win anyway. He's just shaving some points down. That's more obvious than this. This is so devious, these prop bets within games, that it's probably happening on a daily basis across all sports, and you're not seeing it. This guy got probably too greedy on these 2 pitches and put too much money down, and it got flagged. And that's the thing. There are other guys out there that are doing this smarter. And they're getting away with it.
He's probably hearing from guys that were smarter about it because they looked at the betting activity on their games. Okay. And if you're hearing from somebody who's got a decent amount of activity on every pitch, a couple of minor spikes in a game isn't going to draw attention. Well, like I said, I'm guessing Luis Ortiz, how many, show of hands out there, baseball fandom, how many people knew who the heck Luis Ortiz was? And I'm including people in Cleveland. Yes, he's been on the team the entire year. Yes, he's been one of their starters since spring training, but he's not a well-known name and just not a guy that gets followed because no one's really. So if there's no real activity on him except for these couple of pitches, it's just way too obvious. But you're right. Somebody who is far more engaged, somebody who's in a higher profile team, a higher profile name, could very easily get away with it because people are watching. All right. If you're on the Yankees or the Dodgers or the Cubs or any of the teams that really have one of those big nationwide followings, super easy to get away with it because people are paying attention all across the nation. It's a lot easier to get away with it than it would be. I mean, I don't think any of the White Sox pitchers are doing it because
they're not good enough.
They're not good enough.
No, I think that the guys that don't do it are the guys that are still trying to make it in the major leagues. Like
right.
if you're trying to make it in the major leagues, I think you're less apt to do this because you're trying to be the best at everything. It's the guys that are kind of in there and either have said, okay, this is about all I'm going to be, and they feel comfortable that I think turn to this. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's what I would think. Let's get to the Sox Nerd like we do each and every weekend right now. It is now time for the Sox nerd, Dave Marin, who puts all those tidbits and trivia nuggets up on the scoreboard at the rate. He does it each and every home game, and he also comes on each and every weekend, the Sox in the Basement, to share even more with us, brought to you by the Village of Lamont. You want to experience a downtown with real history, great eats and drinks, and green spaces filled with adventure? Visit the Village of Lamont. Shop, dine, drink, explore, see everything they have going on, from evening farmers markets to auto shows in the street to festivals with live music. A lot of this is completely free to the public. It is so much fun down there in the summertime. See it all at lamontdowntown.com. Nerd, what do you got for me?
On Wednesday, the Dodgers' Clayton Kershaw became the first pitcher in Major League history to record his 3,000th strikeout against the White Sox. The Hall of Fame-bound left-hander reached the milestone when he whiffed Vinny Capra in the 6th inning of the Sox' crushing loss at Dodger Stadium on Wednesday night. Kershaw is the 20th hurler to reach 3,000 and only the 4th southpaw, along with Carlton, the Big Unit, and CC Sabathia, to reach the milestone. While Capra is the first Sox player to be a 3,000th strikeout victim, he isn't the first player with Sox ties to wear that albatross. Alan Bannister, who was Don Sutton's number 3,000, Omar Vizquel, who was Greg Maddox's 3,000th, and Nick Swisher, who was Curt Schilling's 3,000th victim, are former or future Sox who fit this category. Prior to Wednesday, the Sox came oh so close to becoming a 3,000th strikeout victim. In fact, they couldn't have come any closer. Walter Johnson entered the Sox game in Washington on June 15, 1923, sitting on 2,998 Ks. With the big train on the verge of his 11th strikeout crown coming on with 1 out in the 7th, 3,000 seemed inevitable. It did not happen. In fact, the Sox recorded as many home runs as they did strikeouts against Johnson. The big righty gave up a 3-run blast to Willie Cam, the first batter he faced, to help the Sox get to within 7-6. Johnson got out of the inning by getting Harry Hooper, another future Hall of Famer, to pop out and Harvey McClellan to ground out to first. Johnson got through the 8th unscored upon, but with no strikeouts. He opened up the 9th by striking out Cam, leaving him 1 shy of 3,000, which is where he would stay until his next outing. After yielding a single to Ray Schalk, another future Cooperstown resident, Johnson secured his 3rd save with a lineout and a flyout, and the then-named Nationals had a win at Griffith Stadium. Number 3,000 came for Johnson in his next start when he whiffed Cleveland's Lou Guisto to start the 3rd. Johnson finished his career as the all-time leader with 3,509 strikeouts, 549 of which came against the Sox, which were his most against any foe. Before I get to my zinger, I remind you that gems like these and long-form pieces are on my blog, which you can link to at soxinthebasement.com. My zinger, in honor of the 20th anniversary of the World Champions, I'm going to zing frequently about that team, throwing out some gems you may not know about the 2005 White Sox. The member of the 2005 White Sox who finished with the most strikeouts was Mark Burley at 1,870. That's it, Chris. Probably more than you wanted to know about Kershaw, the 3,000 strikeout club, Willie Cam, and the big train.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.